Hello, we're back in Terrain Builder, and this is to be an introduction to object layers. We've done shape layers, and we've done a fair bit of work with the raster layers. Objects we've been waiting for, and here we are. Okay, so let's review what we did last time with regards to the object layers, and firstly look at the icons that I'm going to be using. Edit selection, lasso selection, layer selection. So in these early days the layer selection tool is your friend. So I've got this ginormous forest here, and remember, 6 months down the line you're going to have rather a lot more than one forest. So there will be a situation where you need to edit something, but you can't be sure what layer it's on, and that's what the layer selection tool is for. So I'm using the layer selection tool. When I click on that object, its layer is revealed for me here, so I can see, let's say, yep, so that entire forest is on the layer Silbury Hill. Now clearly this is Silbury Hill, so we rushed into it and we've ended up with our forest on the wrong layer. Now you can move objects from layer to layer. I've heard stories of up to 1 million being done, but I'm going to add a new layer and I'm going to call it that forest. So now I know they're on Silbury Hill. If I select the Silbury Hill layer, I can edit selection and draw around it, and now I can choose the correct layer, and they are now all on that forest. So moving objects from layer to layer is quite common, because again later down the line you will be working on one area and quickly do a quick edit on another area, and you realise that you've put one area's items or objects on the wrong layer, so you can move them from layer to layer. Okay, so let's show that again, and what I need to do is clear a hole for our entrance. So here I'm going to use the lasso selection. In fact, let me just double check I'm on the right layer. So layer selection, in amongst the woods, we're on the right layer. So I can use my lasso to make a path through the woods, and we'll do the same down here. Let's save. Okay, so object layer, so that forest has 6,730 objects. Silbury Hill has 1, which is correct. The default layer, now my thinking is that if you've got something on the default layer, then something's gone wrong, because it means that you haven't told it what layer to go on. It means they've been put there and maybe forgotten. So there's 193 of our OG forests. We knew they would dodge when we did them, but let's just layer select, and yeah, there it is, the default layer. So what I'm going to do is clear. This is one of those ones you can't undo. There is a powerful undo in Terrain Builder, but this isn't part of it. So you are literally saying, okay, delete that forest. It was dreadful, wasn't it? It had those floating trees in it. And then just moving forwards, you know, ideally the default layer should contain no objects, reason being because you've got control of them by creating your own layers. So churches, and in fact what I'm going to do is just put a path in this gap that we made, and that will lead nicely on to roads and the road builder tool, but that's a different tutorial. So roads are just objects, just like everything else, but they are special, clearly, because we'll need them to be as good as possible, and there is a tool for doing it. But equally, you can just place them as if they were regular objects. So I'm going to create a library in my template library, and I'm going to call it roads. I'm going to include subdirectories, and I go to DayZ, structures, roads, and in fact parts is what we want. These are all the road parts that you'll be using in the road tool when we get there. So in the queue we've got terrain processor to deal with, and also the road tool, but both of those things need special explanations. So as this is an introduction to layers, we don't want to give too many ways to break them. Okay, so I created a churches layer. We're not doing churches now, but no point in not planning it. But we want paths. The way I look at it is that at some point in the past there was just the ground and the trees, and then humans came and there were paths, and then more humans came and there were churches, and I build up a terrain in that kind of way. Okay, so I've created a separate layer for my paths. I know, because I've done it, that there is a path that's 30 meters long. So I select the object I want, and I go to that add object icon, and I can now add that path. I'm going to save it there, and I'm going to start Bulldozer. Pause it there because it takes a minute. Okay, Bulldozer's loaded, and here's our paths. Okay, so we're doing the introduction to layers, object layers, and you are going to be interacting with those object layers with Bulldozer. So I'm just going to show you one of the things that you probably might get caught up in, but again, the solution is quite simple. So here I am, and I've got these path parts, so I could just add a little bit of variation. So if I copy all three of those, and then I can build up quite quickly a reasonable path, a path through the woods. And you see how it's nicely taken on the contour there. Yeah, so roads will act in a special way for you when necessary, but here we are just placing them as ordinary objects. When it comes to roads, you'll be using the road tool, but there you can see Bulldozer in action allows you to place down. So the little trick I was talking about was, so you're here in Bulldozer and you perhaps want to just pull that tree over. You can't, it won't let you grab it. You see, it appears to give you the red, but I mean, you're not on the right layer. If you can't grab it with the first click and move it, you're on the wrong layer. So back to Terrain Builder, Layer Selection Tool, and that must be the bush. It is. So now I can move it. So once Bulldozer's open, you are in fact going to be going back in and out of Terrain Builder for moving about in layers. So now I can layer select back to my path, and there's my path selected. save. Now let's say you quite like the idea of that path, but you wanted to copy it to another layer. So let's create another layer and call it path 2. Okay, so this area, you'll often get this area tool, couldn't use add area, the target layer is locked. It's slightly confusing. What it's saying is you're on the wrong layer. So layer selection tool, choose that object. So it's currently on paths. I want to move it to paths 2 or path 2. Hide that one. And you can see that you'll quickly build up a whole series of layers, and how you organise those layers is of similar importance to how you organise your template library, because you want to find a workflow that's efficient. So organise your template library logically for you, how you run your project. But yeah, ultimately it's your object layers that will control how the game looks. So that's a quick introduction to object layers. The point being that once you've got a whole load of objects, the layer selection tool is your friend. That'll put you on the right layer, and then you can add more objects to that layer as and when you want to. I'm going to save because I do that regularly. And then let's say you wanted to have a path, so I'm going to go ordinary select. Okay, oh, I'm on the wrong layer, so layer selection. So I want a bit of a path on a new layer called separate POI. There it is, a new layer. So let's go layer select for my path pieces. And I'll move those onto separate POI. But I also want just a few trees for that POI, so I'm going to select, nick a bit from the forest, so selected those, and I'm going to move those onto the separate POI layer. So now if I were to hide all the layers and only show my separate POI, that means, okay, wants me to double check what layer I'm on. Yep. Okay, so sometimes the edit selection won't trigger. I can't explain why. So we're going to instead lasso select. So I can copy it and cut it, and if I were to paste it here, so here I have some objects that I've copied from another layer, put it on a separate layer, and now I can move them about as I want to. So let's show all layers again, and see, we've now gone from 2 layers to 7. You'll quickly build up layers, so at this stage with a very small map, it's good to get into the routine of looking after those layers and avoiding duplication where possible. So that's it. Thank you.